If you had to choose a player from the Hornets roster to close out a game, you would probably pick someone like Gordon Hayward or Terry Rozier. You could also decide for Devonte Graham or rookie sensation LaMelo Ball and feel good about your chances of winning. But how would you feel if Malik Monk was the one taking the shots in crunch time? If you just learned about his performance against the Heat, you may feel confident in his ability to help your team win games. But if you had been paying closer attention to Charlotte over the last few years, you probably wouldn't know what to expect from him. His play has been inconsistent throughout his career. During the first month of the season, it wasn't clear whether he would be part of the team's rotation or not. However, his latest outburst has come at the right time, and it seems like the Hornets will at least give him one more chance to prove himself. But will he be able to make the most out of it, or will we see him regress once again? Let's take a look into it. Coming into the league, Monk wasn't considered as one of the top players in his class. However, his scoring ability caught the attention of multiple franchises, and his record-setting performances with the Wildcats ensured he would get selected in the first round of the 2017 draft. So when it was time for the Hornets to decide who to select with the 11th pick, they drafted him with the hope of adding a player with the potential to become an elite scorer. But unfortunately, things didn't go as expected. The shooting guard had a rough rookie season. The team was trying to compete for a playoff spot, and as a result, Malik didn't receive as many minutes as he would have liked. With a limited role, it was difficult for him to show what he was capable of doing, and his production wasn't the best. Still, he had a few performances that made it look like it would only be a matter of time before he figured things out. However, that moment never came. Despite the high hopes surrounding him, consistency remained an issue for him during his second year in the league. And just like it happened during his rookie season, his role in the team's offense was very limited because of his poor production. But things started to change during season number 3. Despite having a slow start, Monk started to have solid performances more often. And while he still struggled with being consistent, he learned how to recover after a bad game. That helped him get into a rhythm, and after a few months, he managed to put together the best stretch of his young career. In 13 games, Monk increased his scoring average to almost 18 points per game on 46% shooting. And even though he kept coming off the bench, his numbers matched the production of some of the best sixth men in the league. Unfortunately, it wouldn't take long for things to go wrong. A day after making his first career start, the league informed he had violated anti-drug policies and would face an indefinite suspension as a consequence. In other words, the best moment of his pro career was interrupted because of a mistake. While he was eventually reinstated into the team, he now had to deal with the consequences of his actions while also spending more time away from the court than the rest of his teammates. But despite the incident and the pandemic, there was hope he would find a way to continue playing as he did during his hot run. If he did, he would become an additional weapon for a Hornets team that suddenly had too many talented guards. However, even though most people expected him to receive a chance as soon as the season started, Coach James Borrego had a different plan in mind. Despite playing him during the preseason and talking about how his turn would eventually come, Borrego decided to sit Monk during the first few games of the season. And it wasn't until after a few blowout losses that he allowed the shooting guard to make a season debut. At first, his minutes were inconsistent, and it wasn't clear whether he would be given a clear role within the team's offense. But as the games continued to progress, Borrego delivered on his promise to give him a chance. By the end of January, Monk started to appear in every game. And while his minutes were limited, he focused on doing as much as possible with the opportunity he'd be given. That resulted in a solid performance against Milwaukee, where he scored a season-high 18 points. And suddenly, it started to look like he was deserving of that bigger role. But little did we know that was only the tip of the iceberg. In the next game, Monk surprised the whole basketball world by putting up a career-high 36 points against Miami while also leading his team to an outstanding comeback win. And a night where the attention was on LaMelo making the first start of his career, Malik took the spotlight away from him by breaking the franchise record for points scored off the bench while also making big bucket after big bucket. He made a career-high 9 three-pointers, and none of them were more important than the one that tied the game with 16 seconds left in regulation to send it to overtime. And once they got there, the Hornets never looked back. That was by far the best performance of his career, and the fact it helped his team win gives it an extra meaning. But what should we take out of this? Could it be a sign of things to come for the talented guard? Given his consistency issues, it's hard to make any predictions out of just one game. However, we can tell there have been some changes in the way Malik approaches it, and that could be the difference between being glued to the end of the bench and receiving meaningful minutes each game. For instance, he learned how to keep himself calm despite not seeing the floor at the start of the season. At first, he expressed his frustration since he didn't know the exact reason why he wasn't playing. But most recently, he's taken a more professional approach, acknowledging Coach Borrego is trying to do the best to help the team win games. On top of that, he found inspiration in helping the younger players learn how to deal with life as an NBA player. He's been a personal coach of sorts for LaMelo and the team's youngsters, and he's also made sure to cheer for his teammates whenever he's not playing. So even though it may seem like that doesn't make a difference, Borrego took notice of Monk's growth as a professional, and in the end, that could have made the difference in deciding whether to play him or not. Earlier in the season, Monk didn't play despite the team missing some players. but in recent games, he's been among the first men coming off the bench, and his minutes have been progressively increasing. By receiving an extended role, his play has been steadily improving, and it's starting to look like he may be able to regain the form he showed before being suspended. But what does that mean for him and the team? His increase in minutes has come at a time when Rozier has been out of games because of injury. But once he comes back, Coach Borrego could have a difficult time distributing minutes between his guards. We must take into consideration two things. First, there was already a legitimate debate about which guards should be receiving the most minutes. So far, Rozier and Graham have started each of the games when they've been available, with LaMelo coming off the bench. But the youngest Ball brother has been having an excellent season, something that can't be said about Graham, and that's made people question whether LaMelo should be taking Devonte's place in the starting lineup. That looks like a smart decision for a couple of reasons. But before Rozier's injury, Borrego hadn't made up his mind yet. If we add Malik to the mix, that could make things even more difficult for him. Of course, that's an excellent problem to have. Any team would love to have multiple guards capable of starting on their roster. But there's something else to take into consideration when it comes to Malik. Unlike Ball, Rozier, and Graham, Monk is in a contract year. Every game he plays this season will either help him receive a good contract or force him to accept low pay. So while it's understandable he hasn't played that much, the truth is he needs every minute he can get to show what he's capable of doing. But are the Hornets willing to let him play that much? And if they are, will they be willing to offer him an extension once his contract is up? Considering their position, it would be reasonable to assume the Hornets will be looking to make moves later in the season. They already have 3 starting quality guards in the roster, and if Malik continues to improve, that number may increase. Usually having a deep rotation can help you win games, and that's been true for Charlotte so far. But having so many players worthy of receiving starter minutes can lead to problems, frustration, and eventually, losses. On top of that, their rotation at other positions isn't that good. They could use an upgrade at the center position to solidify their status as a playoff contender. Or they could trade to add young talent that could form a future core along with Ball and players like Miles Bridges. So, does that mean Monk should be placed on the trading block? Well, if he keeps playing at a high level, it may be just a matter of time before the team is forced to make a decision on which guards they want to keep. We're confident LaMelo won't be going anywhere anytime soon, but there's a chance that either Graham, Rozier, or Monk are sent away by the trade deadline or during the offseason. Still, take that with a grain of salt. After all, we're talking about the same front office that offered large contracts to Rozier and Hayward without any guarantees they'd be able to live up to expectations. So perhaps we shouldn't expect them to do the obvious. In any case, Monk's recent play is a reason for optimism after a disappointing start to the season. If he continues to perform like that, he should keep receiving meaningful minutes, and that could help him change the narrative that surrounded him for the past 3 years. If he does manage to do that, he should receive a considerable raise during the offseason. Now, whether the Hornets will be willing to offer him an extension, that remains a question. But for the time being, let's just hope Malik keeps playing at this high level. But now, do you believe Monk will be able to reach his full potential in Charlotte? Or would it be better for him if he played somewhere else? Let us know in the comments. We hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content, because we are courtside.